Hello, friend.
Long time no see, you guys. It's Mrs. Klein.
And Mr. Creighton.
We are here today with a podcast for you guys. We're kind of skipping a couple of sections or lessons. We're moving along to lesson 8, and it's entitled The Byzantine Empire. And like every podcast, every lesson has a guiding question. And this guiding question is, how did the Byzantine Empire develop and form its own distinctive church?
So just like Mrs. Klein said, we did skip ahead. So if you want to follow along in the textbook, we're on page 99 now. So 99 to 105. And looking at the blue vocabulary words, we have Byzantine Empire, Constantinople, Eastern Orthodox Church, and Patriarch. So remember, you need to know these words for the podcast quiz that's coming up.
Yeah. All right, you guys. So before we get into the content and the introduction of this lesson, we would just need to let you know, we learned about how Rome expanded and got really big, but we also learned that it was kind of too big for its britches and it ended up crashing and falling. In 476, the western half of the Roman Empire fell and collapsed.
But then the eastern half, it thrived for a really long time, and that actually became known as the Byzantine Empire. So the Byzantine Empire is actually the eastern half of the Roman Empire. So half of it fell, and this half thrived and did really well.
So we're going to find out a little bit about them right now. All right, at first, the Byzantine Empire was the continuation of the Roman Empire in the east.
After the fall of Rome, the Eastern Empire continued for another 1,000 years. We call this the Byzantine Empire after Byzantium, the original name of its capital city.
The eastern and western parts of the original empire remained connected for a time through a shared Christian faith. However, the church in the east developed in its own unique ways. It became known as the Eastern Orthodox Church.
All right, guys, looking at section 1, which is Constantinople. Constantinople was more than 800 miles to the east of Rome. Why did Constantine choose this site to be the capital of the Roman Empire? One reason was that the site was surrounded by water on 3 sides, making it easy to defend.
All right, Constantinople also stood at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, and the many sea and overland trade routes linking east and west. During the Byzantine Empire, this ideal location helped to make the city and some of its citizens very wealthy.
At its height, Constantinople was home to around 1 million people.
That's a lot.
Especially back then.
Yeah.
The city's language and culture were Greek, but traders and visitors spoke many languages.
Life in Constantinople was more comfortable than in Western Europe. The city boasted a sewer system, which was quite rare in medieval times. Social services were provided by hospitals, homes for the elderly, and orphanages.
Almost everyone attended the exciting chariot races at a stadium called the Hippodrome.
All right, now we're going to talk about the reign of Justinian I. One of the greatest Byzantine emperors was Justinian I, whose long reign lasted from 527 to 565. But Justinian's reign nearly came to an abrupt end much sooner.
Fighting broke out, spilled into the streets, and escalated into a full-scale rebellion. Justinian was determined to rebuild the city on a grand scale and put huge sums of money into public works. The emperor also built many grand churches, including the magnificent Hagia Sophia.
Besides rebuilding Constantinople, Justinian tried to reclaim some of the Roman Empire's lost territory. He launched military campaigns that for a time took back parts of North Africa, Italy, and Spain.
Justinian is most famous, however, for creating a systematic body of law. All right, so looking at number 3, the Eastern Orthodox Church. To the Byzantines, Christianity was more than a religion. It was the very foundation of their empire.
Over time, the Byzantine Church separated from the church in Rome and became known as the Eastern Orthodox Church.
The Byzantines viewed the emperor not just as the head of the government, but as the living representative of God and Jesus Christ.
Right? The Eastern Orthodox Church played a central role in everyone's daily lives.
Like Roman Catholic clergy, Orthodox clergy were ranked in order of importance. In Byzantine times, the emperor had supreme authority in the church. He selected the Patriarch of Constantinople, who ranked just below him in the matters of religion.
Orthodox priests served under patriarchs and other bishops.
Both the clergy and the worshippers sang or chanted the liturgy or form of public worship.
All right, Christian faith inspired magnificent architecture and artwork in the Byzantine Empire. The cathedral Hagia Sophia served as a model for many Orthodox churches.
Building on the Greek love of art, the Orthodox Church used many images in its services and prayers. Byzantine artists created beautiful icons which were usually painted on small wooden panels.
Many Byzantines believed that sacred pictures brought them closer to God, but later icons also became a source of violent disagreement.
All right, guys. Section 4, conflict between East and West. Medieval Europe and the Byzantine Empire were united in a single faith, Christianity. Over the centuries, however, cultural, political, and religious differences led to conflict between the two parts of the old Roman Empire.
Perhaps the most important was the conflict that developed between the churches of East and West.
The first major disagreement concerned religious icons. Many Christians in medieval times used images of Jesus, Mary, and the saints in worship and prayer. Some Christians in the East, however, believed that people were wrongly worshiping the icons as if they were divine. So in 730 CE, the Byzantine Emperor Leo III banned the use of religious images in all Christian churches and homes.
All right, another major disagreement occurred in 800 CE, a time when Empress Irene ruled the Byzantine Empire. Because she was a woman, Pope Leo III did not view her as honorable or strong enough to govern.
Instead, Leo decided to crown Charlemagne, the king of the Franks, as Holy Roman Emperor.
The final break happens, you guys. Matters between the East and West came to a head in 1054 when Cyrilius, the Patriarch of Constantinople, wanted to reassert Byzantine control of the church.
Despite future attempts to heal the division, the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church were now separate churches.
All right, you guys, in this lesson, you learned about the founding of the Byzantine Empire and the Eastern Orthodox Church.
Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire. In 330 CE, the Roman Emperor Constantine moved his capital to Byzantium, and later called Constantinople. After the fall of Rome, the eastern half of the empire continued on there. Today is referred to as the Byzantine Empire.
All right, the reign of Justinian I. One of the greatest Byzantine emperors was Justinian I. He rebuilt Constantinople after it was destroyed by rioting in 532 and worked to reclaim some of Rome's lost territory. His most lasting contribution is probably the Justinian Code, which became the basis for many other later legal codes in the Western world.
The Eastern Orthodox Church. The Byzantine Empire was a Christian state. The Eastern Orthodox Church was at the center of daily life and inspired distinctive and magnificent art and architecture.
All right, and then there was that conflict between the East and West. Byzantine emperors and patriarchs in Constantinople clashed with the popes in Rome over a number of issues. These disagreements led to a schism between the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church in 1054.
All right, guys. Again, looking at the guiding question, how did the Byzantine Empire develop and form its own distinctive church?
And remember, we've got those 4 vocabulary terms: Byzantine Empire, Constantinople, Eastern Orthodox Church, and Patriarch. All right, you guys, see you in class.
I feel nothing.